Breaking news right now, broken by our Adam Schefter, who joins us now live. And Adam, the story on Winston seemed to be brewing overnight and making headlines after an ESPN radio commentator in Tallahassee mentioned that Winston was facing a suspension. How did we get to this point where you're reporting this news now, Adam?
Well, that was the first sign of it, Sage, last night. And again, today, speaking to multiple people, they say that the NFL is now planning to suspend Jameis Winston 3 games. It could be handed down as early as Friday. And when you look at this particular case that stems back to March of 2016, I think in this particular case, Jameis Winston recognizes that he did some things wrong, that he would do some things differently. The NFL looked into this, and the more it peeled back the onion, the more uncomfortable it grew with this particular situation. And so ultimately the NFL, I think, is going to decide to suspend Jameis Winston for the first 3 games of the season, which means that Ryan Fitzpatrick would then be the Buccaneers' starting quarterback. Last year, he went 2-1 in place of Jameis Winston. Now, keep in mind, I don't know that Jameis Winston is going to wind up appealing, and that's on the basis of something that's very simple. He's scheduled to make $705,000 in base salary this season. A 3-game suspension would cost him $124,000. If he decides to appeal this, and it goes on to become a long, protracted battle, like we've seen with Ezekiel Elliott or Tom Brady, it could leak into next season when he's scheduled to make close to $21 million. So really, it's in Jameis Winston's best interest not to appeal this, to accept the 3-game suspension, to accept some responsibility, and then move on going forward. We've seen that basically appeals in the past with the NFL, i.e. Tom Brady and Ezekiel Elliott, have been largely fruitless and certainly time sensitive. And so in this particular case, I think that Jameis Winston may not wind up appealing this, and he may just accept the suspension that the NFL hands down. And again, was told that the NFL is planning 3 games. Now, it still could adjust that figure and increase it or decrease it depending on some of the evidence that comes forward between now and then, between the time that the NFL makes the decision. But again, as it is right now, the league is preparing to suspend Jameis Winston for 3 games.
Adam, I think you mentioned an important point about Ezekiel Elliott and Tom Brady and the lack of success they have had when appealing these type of suspensions. What is the time frame for Jameis Winston as far as needing to make that decision?
Listen, assuming that the league hands down this suspension as early as tomorrow and certainly within the next week, Jameis Winston can make the decision right away not to appeal that suspension. And if he were not to appeal it, I would think that we would know something right away with that. If he decides to appeal it, I think that also would be shortly there afterwards. We'll know one way or another. But Sage, the numbers add up to him not appealing this and accepting it and moving on and forging ahead and learning from this and growing from this. There have been questions about him that date back to his time at Florida State. The fact of the matter is, when you talk to the people in and around the Tampa area, they think that he's been